And we're live. Hello and welcome back to IDEAChatCNY, your source for weekly web chats with entrepreneurs, investors, technologists, and innovators of all kind. My name is Ian and today I'll be your host. Today we'll be talking to Dave Dickerson, CEO and President of Accurate Background. He's with us today to give his advice to young entrepreneurs. For those on Twitter, please feel free to use the hashtag IDEAChatCNY and share this link with any friends and colleagues. Also, at any point during the show, please feel free to hit the question button located right here to submit any questions that you may have for Mr. Dickerson or myself, and we'll answer those live on the air today. Now, a little background on Dave Dickerson. Dave started Accurate Background in 1997. A serial entrepreneur, Dave used his knowledge of the industry to assemble a team of experienced professionals to provide a superior background screening solution. His innovation and direction has led to the development of intuitive, cutting-edge technology designed to create cost-saving solutions. Dave's unfailing initiative and expert leadership has been rewarded through recognition for 3 years in a row on Deloitte's Technology Fast 500 as one of the fastest growing technology companies in North America based on a 318% overall growth in 5-year period. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Dickerson to the show.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for sitting down with us today.
Sure. Glad to be here.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and anything you'd like to add about Accurate Background?
Accurate background, I've been doing this for 16 years. I founded it, again, 16 years ago. I actually worked for a year before that. I worked for a company that was a public records aggregator, and that's what gave me the concept to do Accurate Background. Initially, when we started out as a pure wholesaler, simply providing data to the industry, providing it to other screening companies. And over the course of months providing this information, we actually started having end user clients. The retailers and the businesses started approaching us directly to provide information to them. And that's basically what we started doing. And then over the course of time, we actually got away from the wholesale model altogether. And so this is where we're at now.
Interesting. So, could you share a few of your clients that our users may be familiar with?
Currently, we do Starbucks. So anytime you enter a Starbucks, any of the baristas there, we do all the Starbucks in North America. We do Amazon, so all their fulfillment centers and their corporate. Nestle's, all their different divisions. JCPenney, Ross stores. So those are a number of the large national accounts that we have. But our clients will range from that level all the way down to a couple hundred clients, not a couple hundred employees a year. So
Okay.
we have a vast range. We have about 3,500 clients.
Wow. So, you went to college to study film. What made you think that you could start a technology business?
Um, as far as I went to film, for me, the process of starting the business was more of a creative outlet. Uh, Kind of what I liked about the whole film. When I left school, uh, what happens, it was through a series of events. I didn't immediately start a technology company. Ended up doing other things prior to that. So was not my first business. I started out selling exercise equipment, and then from there, I actually had a sauna company, which we would fabricate and install sauna equipment and steam equipment, which was more of a construction company. And then through the course of time, I actually ended up working at this public records aggregator, and then from there I left, and then I started Accurate. And Accurate, again, it's just through a series of events it came out. Actually, I'm not a technology person. I don't view myself. I understand it and I understand how to leverage it, but personally, this is not. I don't program. I don't uh, necessarily understand all the terms. So which I actually view that as it puts me at an advantage, where I don't see the roadblocks. So when we're doing programming, I can ask questions as why can't we do that, and actually force the developers to actually think outside the box. Because sometimes what they'll do is they'll have a process and they'll just go down a process, um, and they're not necessarily thinking outside. I can actually force questions on them to make them change direction as to what is capable in what they're developing. So,
Would you recommend a CEO or a young entrepreneur that's starting a technology company would you advise them to start learning to program or seek someone who's a better programmer?
okay, I always view the people I hire. I always try to hire people who are much more knowledgeable about their expertise, about their areas of expertise. Obviously, they need to be more knowledgeable about their areas than I am. So what I look at it is in my role, I always look at my position as someone who's going to actually be a person who helps them reach their potential. So there's a lot of trust involved in doing it in this way because you have to believe in the people that you're hiring. So it has to be a situation where these people have been there, done that, and they actually will advise you and take you to the next level.
Right.
So as far as
So when you were
program,
first starting out, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying as far as programming, um, for myself, it was neither an advantage or a disadvantage. So depending on what company you're starting, there may be some advantages to having that knowledge. It just really
Right.
depends on the type of business. What we're considered, um, though you describe it as a technology company, we're considered a technology-enabled services. So for us, even though we have a technology front end, it's still a service, and so still a manual component on the back end. And the way we sell to our clients is once you get past the integrations and technology, there's still a large service component that we have to provide.
Right. So when first starting out, what kind of resources did you tap into that help you grow and expand your business?
So when we first started out, this is back in '97. I basically started this company with nothing more than a desktop computer and a fax machine. Okay, and that's how we started out. The internet was still in its infancy, and so we didn't leverage websites or do any type of programming like that. A lot of the software that was out at the time was really still desktop type software. So our industry was still on a fax in, fax out basis. So we started out that way, but I quickly was able to determine, literally within a week, that to be able to manage our systems or all the orders that were coming in, that I needed some type of internal system to be able to operate this. So I was fortunate enough at the time, I was dating someone who's actually now my wife, who was a programmer, who actually built our initial database. She actually just built it in a simple Access program, and since then we've moved off that, but that's still kind of the basis of what we did. And then as we started growing, we looked for ways to pass information back and forth uh, more streamlined. So we actually did this back in '98 when we actually landed Macy's department stores. We actually did an integration with them directly with their PeopleSoft system, which was actually unheard of at the time in this industry. So we were just passing data electronically in the form of batches.
Okay. Did you ever seek out any mentors?
No, actually, I've always viewed the people that I've worked for. I've always been able to get information, not necessarily in the form of a mentor, is that you're able to observe uh, uh, what they're doing. You ask questions, and where I've been fortunate in my career is I've always taken risk in any jobs that I've had. So I'll kind of give you an idea of where I started. When I was in school, I worked for an exercise equipment retailer. They were opening stores, and the owner at the time, he needed someone to go open some stores down in a neighboring county, and no one said anything. And I was 21 at the time, and so I threw my hand up and I said, "I'll go do it," having never done this before. And everyone kind of looked like thought I was absolutely crazy for offering to do this, and because he really didn't have any other options, he said, "Fine, we'll let you go down there and do this." And I just picked up uh, purchase orders, invoices, whatever I thought I would need what I've been using, and I just went down there and I just kind of figured it out. And I started organizing what I needed to do to get this thing going, and I got it up and probably over the course of a summer, I got the store up and running, and ended up being one of the better stores. So that's
Interesting.
kind of where I started out, and then from there I went to a competitor, and I did some turnarounds for them as well.
Okay. So you started Accurate, like you said, you started it out of a spare bedroom, and at the same time you were raising two kids. Um, what kind of tips and tools did you use to manage your time?
One of the things that I think that's one of my strengths has always been from an organizational. You got to take care of the things that you don't necessarily want to do. So I tend to make a lot of lists, and you just go down and say what do I need to accomplish today, and you just make that um, priority list, and you just go down it and you just do what you got to do. And I've never been a person who necessarily watches the clock, and especially when you work for yourself, that's just not going to happen. So sometimes you're going to have to get in there. In the early days, uh, I'd get a phone call from a client on the East Coast, and it'd be 5 o'clock in the morning. And I'm still asleep, and I'd run down the hall to answer the call, and they didn't have any idea I was working out of my house. And they were like, "Wow, you get into the office early," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do anything for my clients." Um, so we would just do those things, and you just start prioritizing what needs to be done. Um, and again, because we're not in a retail situation where people were coming in and out the door, it did allow me the flexibility. I obviously raising two kids, having to take them to school, pick them up, so I did have some of that flexibility. So, but definitely, you got to make lists, and you can't keep pushing things aside. And it's always easy to do the things that are more attractive to you, and push away the things that you don't want to do. But you know what? You gotta fulfill orders. You gotta, build the products. You gotta sometimes do the things you don't want to do, and you just can't keep putting them off. And sometimes it's easy to do that, and that's just what you gotta force yourself to do.
Right. So in the early days of Accurate, what were you looking for when you were first hiring people?
Okay, so when hiring, it's a good question. So right now, as a company, we're about 270 people, and so we've gone through a lot of changes. The way I view companies, and again, this is not the first time I've done this, but basically, there's two ways of when you start out. You're either gonna start out from the bottom up, so you're going to grow the company, or you're going to start with from top down. Now, doing top down means that you're going to hire. So, like if you're a technology company, you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to hire my my chief programmer. I'm going to hire marketing people. I'm going to hire my CFO. I'm going to do all these things. Well, the problem with that is it sounds great, but it takes a lot of money. Okay. So when you're bootstrapping something, a lot of times what you're going to end up doing is you're going to hire the people that you need to get the job done what you need at that moment. So that's what we did. Okay, well I did. So initially the people I hired were basic operational people. And as we were growing, I would look at what is the skill set that I need. So do I need uh, do I need usually a HR person is not the first person you would need, but do I need a technology person, or do I need a salesperson? Do I need uh, a finance person? And then you would go to those people, and that's basically how we started hiring. I think the first management position I hired was a customer service manager. So it was more a customer service slash operations person because we were doing more data entry. And as we've grown, you start adding those layers. And one of the things that you have to be aware of that, especially when you're a small company, is usually when you take that route, the people you hire initially, just for use of number sakes, the people who get you to your first $1 million in sales are usually not the same people who are going to get you to your next to 5 million, and from 5 million to 10, and then from 10 to 20. It's all takes different skill sets. But once you start getting the revenues up, you can start affording being in a position to afford the people you need. And usually the people that you hire in the beginning for like a small office, generally those people like being in small offices. They like being in an office of 5 people, and for Christmas or holidays, we all get together at someone's house, and that's what they enjoy. So as the companies grow, they generally don't like to be around uh, those situations. They don't like to be part of that type of company. So what they do is they end up kind of weeding themselves out anyway. And it,
Okay.
and the tough part of that is always maintaining the culture. So
Right. So we have a question from the audience right now. So the question is: you started a few business to customer businesses. Is running a B2B business any is much different than it is now?
I didn't catch the first part. What was
It's
the first
actually on
part
the
of the
screen
question?
if you see it.
Okay. Um, yeah, like a business to consumer, at the end of the day, it's all service. So the way I kind of look at it is, I'm either when you're dealing with a B2C, like what I did with the sauna business, a lot of times it's a one-time sale. So that customer, it's a one-time purchase. You're going to service them. Um, Chances are, unless it's a contractor, you're probably never ever going to get a repeat sale from them. With the business side, like especially for what we do, when we sign a client, it's an ongoing relationship. Okay. The other thing is on the business side, I mean, you definitely, what ends up happening, it's a relationship that you're cultivating. Sometimes the sale's not going to happen right away, depending on the type of product. It could take longer. To give you an idea, our sales cycles right now, if it's an enterprise account, let's say it's a large opportunity, say that's doing 10, it's a client that has 10,000 or more employees, that sales cycle could take anywhere from 90 to 180 days to close the client. And then once you close that client, depending on how sophisticated their internal technology is, it could take another 6 months to even get to the point where their first order. So you could be, from the time you initially contacted a person, you could be a year before you actually see an order from this person. So there's a lot of investment up front. In a B2C situation, you really don't have that. It's usually like a 30-day, especially for the size sales where we had in the sauna, where the average ticket was about $2,000. Then they don't necessarily order on a one call, but it may be 1 or 2 weeks, and then they're going to order.
Right. So in startups, having the right team is more often than not a critical component to the success of the business. What advice can you offer young entrepreneurs who may recognize that someone on their team is no longer the right person for the job?
Again, that goes back to what I said earlier. So when you're starting out, the the people that you hire may not be around as you expand, and to some degree, some of those people start weeding out themselves. The best thing you can do is just be honest with people, and if you have open communication, a lot of times those people are not going to figure it out, or I'm sorry, are going to figure it out that it's just not where they're going to want to be, and that they're not contributing. If sometimes you just have to have those uncomfortable conversations, and even today, after doing this as long as I have, I don't have them often, but I do have them, and they're still uncomfortable. And there's a saying is, if it ever gets comfortable, then you're doing it way too often. So then that's when you have to kind of look at yourself. But it's just open dialogue. You just have to have open dialogue with the people. And part of the problem especially when you're talking to people just starting out, what ends up happening is, especially eh, when you get like friends or family, everyone wants to get together. Everyone's excited about this new opportunity, and everyone says, "Okay, let's just all do this together." A lot of times, that's not the right thing to do. Okay, because just because he's your friend or he's your relative, he's probably not the right person that long term that's going to work out with, and then it's actually going to strain the relationship at some point.
Right. So the entrepreneurial journey is often described as a roller coaster ride. So throughout your journey, what have you considered as successes and failures?
As far as okay, so to me, success is kind of like an ongoing journey. So it's not something where at any point that I ever think that uh, like we've arrived and this is it and we reached the top. I still think that there's a lot more runway where we're going as a company that we can grow. The failures, I would love to. It'd be great to sit there and say, I had few failures. The truth is, anyone who would tell you that has a successful company is probably lying to you. Um, we've had our failures. Uh, what the failures have been is we've gone down paths with products or programmers or taking chances on people. And what you try to do is you just try to minimize it. I've been lucky enough that nothing's been catastrophic. Obviously, we're still doing this. Um, looking back on it, would I do anything different on those? I probably wouldn't, because the thing is about failures is if you're intuitive, you're going to learn from them. And the thing is, you're not gonna make the same mistake twice. Okay, and you learn what works and what doesn't work, and that's what you want to. That's how I view it. I mean, so I wouldn't change anything from that standpoint, as much as the successes. And if I have successes, I look at those and say, okay, what worked. So one of the things when we first started out selling to corporate clients, we started out, the first client that approached us was a retailer. Well, and I said earlier, Macy's department store. So once you got that success, you just keep repeating it. You go to the next retailer and say, hey, well, we're doing Macy's, and then once you get Ross, and we're doing Macy's and Ross, and it's easier to sell the next client, and you go down the path. But then you get kind of pigeonholed and say, well, you guys only sell the retailer, so then you got to look at other clients um, to sell to. But the successes are something that you can build on, and even failures. Failures are something that you don't want to repeat them, but those are learning experiences where you come back and say, what went wrong? How could I have done it different? And so then you go back and recorrect.
Okay. So you've mentioned risk a lot. So what kind of advice would you have for young entrepreneurs regarding risk?
Okay, so a lot of times there's always this kind of thought that entrepreneurs are big risk takers, and actually I know a lot of entrepreneurs and people who start a business. Actually, they're very conservative, and I'm always tend to minimize. And I've done other businesses and ideas, and I always do the minimum I can to get it started. Okay, so one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to take a lot of money, and you don't want to take, especially friends and family money, because that's something you got to explain later if you're going to lose it. But you don't want to take a lot of money, and then because then what ends up happening, you start making decisions that you may not otherwise have done. So when you do things smaller, you minimize the risk. Okay, so you start testing the waters, and then you start building on that. So to kind of give you an idea, as from financially from us, this company effectively was started on $3,000. So everything was self-funded. We started putting money back into the company as it was proven out. We would just reinvest everything we were doing. So again,
Okay.
it's all minimizing your exposure. That's everything you do is got to minimize your exposure.
How would you describe your leadership style?
Um, my leadership style is I definitely do not micromanage. One of the things that I did very early is I wanted this company to basically be able to survive it. That one, if I went outside and got hit by a bus, or if I ever sold it to someone else, that it was never the company was never about me. So a lot of times you see these uh, companies that it's all about the owner, founder, CEO, and that you know everyone's concerned about all the ideas and all the structures is coming from this one individual. So a long time ago, I made sure that I was never going to be like that. Um, Again, I hire my staff is a lot smarter than I am, and they come back and they will advise me on specific areas in their departments. And again, and I tend to be more of a sounding board as to where we need to go. As far as I don't micromanage them. What I tend to do is since I know the industry so well, I tend to be able to be a good sounding board for them as to what direction we should be going. Um, but in their individual expertise, I don't really get that involved. I understand it, but I don't micromanage what they do because I can't. I can't be an expert in HR and an expert in finance and an expert in sales and an expert in technology. There's just no way.
Right.
So
So you recently raised a rather large round of funding. Can you tell us more about that and why you felt it was the right time to bring in outside capital?
right. So for us, again, everything we had ever done has been self-funded. So we have never. brought in outside capital. Uh, as you can imagine, in our industry, uh, it kind of give you an idea. Our industry is about 3 billion U.S. Is the size of the market. Um, it's extremely fragmented. So to give you an idea, there's 785 companies that do what we do. Of the 785 companies that do what we do, there's probably 8 now that can actually handle any type of large enterprise account. And a lot of them are these little small mom and pops. 5-person offices that do a very good business in their local area. So there's always this idea of a roll up. And so a lot of the private equity companies, they get around, and they're trying to figure out how to roll up all this business. So for us, I get a lot of calls I've always gotten a lot of calls from private equity. I probably literally average 1 or 2 a week. Um, we have always stayed away from doing any type of raise. I've always tried to self-fund it, and the reason we took some money from is Boathouse Capital was because we're finally to a point where for the size and we're fronting a lot of money that we actually had to bring in capital just to help in the growth. It was just one of those situations where that you're having to hire people and you have to lay out money to basically be able to grow the company, and that was one of the things that we just didn't have it. And so we're kind of at this inflection point where probably in the next 2 years it'll really start taking off. But we've been growing at 30% a year, and it's hard to do that without actually having some money there to be able to tap into. So, and that was the reason. And Boathouse they weren't an equity investor; they were subordinated debt. So one of the things that it's basically it's between private equity and a senior debt from a bank. So they're in the middle. So it's subordinated debt. It's interest only. We pay them. Obviously, we can support it, uh, but they don't have any equity in the company. So.
Right. So if you were to start a new business today, which markets interest you the most and why?
I mean, so having been in more the HR space, I would probably gravitate towards that, just because it's something that I would actually identify with. One of the things that if I could give advice to people just starting out, this is my personal opinion. So I don't ever believe that anyone sits around on a with a business and they're going to sit around a kitchen table and say we're going to come up with a business idea, and then they go out and execute on it. I just don't think it happens that way. What ends up happening is to me a definition of an entrepreneur is someone who recognizes opportunity. Okay, so there's things that are happening around you that you're able to observe, and you say, you know what, there's a better way of doing this. Okay, and that's how you're gonna uh, you look at ways of if this is how it's doing now, I'm going to create a better mousetrap. Okay, and that's kind of how I started this business. I mean, the company that I only worked for them for a little while. I presented the idea of wholesaling to them and actually developing a direct uh, source for the records, and they had no interest in it. So I said, fine, I'll go do it on my own. If I go back to the sauna business, that was when I first started that one. I had a contractor call me who wanted me to build something. I wasn't working for the company anymore, and I went out and took a measurement because it was something to do. I was 24 at the time, and while we're taking measurements, there was a lot of construction going on, and so I told the guy I was with, I said, "I'll be back in a second." I went out and I sold 5 saunas that day to other homes that were being built. So you just have to recognize opportunity and work from there. It, and I mean, there's some. You look at companies that happen out like the Googles and Yahoos and the Facebooks. Everybody wants to be that in a sense, but if you really try to understand how those companies were formed, they were not formed as a companies to make money. Okay, it was kind of like they became these huge companies by accident. That was not the intent of going out and trying to build a company. None of them were created that way. And you can read stories and read up on these companies and how they're built, and They never start out that way. So it's almost like companies are, in a sense, are started by accident. And I think what ends up happening is when you say I'm gonna, you start calling yourself an entrepreneur, and I was kind of like raise an eyebrow to that, because it's well, what does that mean? See, I tell myself, I don't call myself an entrepreneur. I don't view myself as an entrepreneur. I don't ever refer to myself in any way that way. So what ends up happening is, you have to look at, where can I see opportunity, and you can actually be working at a company that you're working for someone else and actually see opportunity. So I go back to when I with the exercise equipment company, there was an opportunity there. This guy wanted help. He needed someone to build the company. I said, fine, so I'll do it. Then I went to the next company. They basically handed me the company. It was severely in debt. Said, you got to pay yourself from what you have here. And within a year, I was able to turn that company around. And so you just create your own situations, and you could do those within the companies that you are. You don't have to go out on your own. And again, it's just, you're always looking for something, a way of doing something better, and it's usually something that's around you. So, and you have to be passionate about it too. I mean, you have to be. If it, You should never do something or start a company because you want to make money. I got to tell you, as soon as you do that, it's going to fail right off the bat. You should do something because you actually believe in what you're doing. Okay, and you believe in what you're doing, you enjoy what you're doing, and that's how the company's going to grow. This company here, um, am I passionate about background checks? I want to say I'm passionate about background checks. I enjoy what I'm doing. I love the creativity of figuring out ways to accept information from people, solve customers' problems, uh, with candidates. Uh, we're not about preventing people from working. If anything, I am actually believe that everyone should have an opportunity to get a job. Um, so we look for ways to make it a better candidate experience for them. And I've always said that the day that this coming here is no longer fun for me or interesting to me, I won't do it. I'd rather go do something else. And you should enjoy what you're doing, and that should be the basis of why you do anything. And if you're in the money will become secondary. What if you're doing what you love? That should be the driving point. But I go back to how I originally started. I don't ever believe that people sit at a kitchen table and say, "Okay, let's start a business," and what is that business going to be? If that's really what you're thinking an entrepreneur is, then you're better off going out and buying a franchise, something that's an established business, and then there's nothing wrong with that at all. If you can swing it, buy a franchise, and you can run one of those. But and when you're starting, again, start off small, and you test it and make sure that there's actual opportunity there. This is not one of those situations, and I've never seen it where build it and they will come. It never works out that way. It's always uh, you look at, again, I'll go back to examples. Uh, there's a great book. It's called I forget who the author is, but it's called The Silicon Boys, and it talks about Silicon Valley and how a lot of these .com started out. And you talk about Yahoo. So you had these two guys who built a page just to organize information that they were getting, and they did it for themselves. They didn't do it for anybody else. And then their friends started asking, "Hey, can I have that? Can I have that?" And it starts this viral effect that all of a sudden they had all these viewers, but they had no way of monetizing it. It wasn't until someone else recognizes, you have all these people on this site, just figure out a way to monetize that. And the same thing with Google. Google didn't set out to build a company of this mega company that they have. They built that a way to just get information, and it grew. And again, and then they had no way of monetizing it, and then they figured out a different way of monetizing it, and it always works out that way. And you just have to be passionate about why you're doing it. So, but again, if you're going in it and saying it's because I want to make a lot of money, that's worst idea. So what you're going to end up doing is spending a lot of money.
Are there any entrepreneurs that you look up to?
Um, again, I always go back to the people the, the people who are interesting to me are, like, you look at like a Michael Dell. Michael Dell, again, here's a perfect example. Here's a guy who started rebuilding computers for friends and family, and did it out of a dorm room. And it got to the point where I think the story was he got to like almost 2 million in sales, and he was still in his dorm room. So 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 he went off on his own. So guys like that who build things, um, that's those are the ones where I find really interesting. So I mean I love reading like those type of biographies on those and Gates, and you have guys like Ellison, who's the consummate salesperson who will sell it to you even though he doesn't have it, and then he'll go back to the office and they'll figure out how to build it. So
So we got one more question from the audience. I'll put it on the screen. So do you keep film as a hobby at all, and did it have any impact on how you run your business?
I don't keep it as a hobby. Um, the I'll do the family stuff, which is interesting from the editing, but that's about it. Um, what I liked about the film was the whole creative side. I love creating and trying to solve something, and even telling a story. Um, and for us, to me, this is you look at what we do from a business. It's still you're creating something, and taking something to start up. And one of the things that's exciting about when you start a business, as it grows, it becomes its own entity. So myself, as I don't identify myself with accurate, or that accurate's me. It's its own entity, and it's something that could survive beyond me. And it's kind of interesting. You sit back and you watch it grow, and then you have other people who take interest. So when you're hiring people, you want other people to be uh, to get excited about what you are about the company. You want them to be just as excited and growing this up. And I think from a recruiting standpoint, when we're out hiring, it's kind of interesting that I'm probably the best closer when we're hiring people, because they kind of see I can get them excited as to where we're headed, and then they want to be part of that. And that's what you want. That's what you want. And then from the going back to the from going back to film, but creating, I love solutionizing things. I love talking with clients, and then one of the things I think why we do so well in the market is we try to pinpoint what is their pain point, what problem are they trying to solve, okay, and then we let's just address those issues, and then everything else is money and what you're selling things become secondary.
Right. So we're starting to wind down now, but are there any final words of advice you'd like to share?
It's like I said before, you find what you love to do and pursue that. And the money, that should never be a driving factor. And look for opportunities that are around you, and it doesn't mean you have to take these big risks. And you should test things out first too. Just because you believe it's a good idea doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to agree it's a good idea. And that's why, if you can test things, start small, you minimize your risk. um, you know where you have failures, I wouldn't you know you learn from those. Play it back in your head and say, what did we do wrong? How could I have done it differently? And then again, course correct, and then go back and learn what you did and make it better. And if you have successes, okay, why were we so successful in that? What made it work, and how can we make it better? And it's almost it's everything's evolving. So one of the things that I never had, and not that it's a bad idea to have one, but I didn't write out a business plan. And my whole thing was, it was always kind of this fluid. And if you write out a business plan, which is, again, it's a good idea, it should be fluid. It should be changing. You should be able to change it, because if you get stuck in with blinders on, that I got to stick to this plan, you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, you have to be able to change, and some things that you thought were going to work that may not work, and you got to be able to recognize that. So,
Very cool. So if any of our viewers wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that? Do you have a Twitter handle or email address you prefer to share out?
the that's a good question on the Twitter.
One second, everybody. I'll be right back. If you have any final questions, please submit those now while we're wrapping it up.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Oh, I don't know where I lost you. So it's Dave
No worries.
Dickerson too at Twitter,
Dave Dickerson 2. Okay.
the number 2 at Twitter, or on
Is that
LinkedIn.
right there?
LinkedIn's another. Yep, or LinkedIn. And feel free. You know, anything I can help you guys out with, I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Very cool. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So we want to thank you for coming on our show.
Sure. Thanks for having
All
me.
right. All right. Take care.
Thank you. All right.
And that's it for this week's web chat. Please feel free to share this link with any of your friends or family or colleagues, and be on the lookout for more web chats. I'm Ian Dickerson, and thanks for tuning in today.